And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for spending your valuable time with the Adapt 2030 channel. Buffalo, looking like the day after tomorrow. Our winter wheat growing zones day after tomorrow, pounded by the fastest temperature drop ever recorded. Meanwhile, Miami was cooler than London. How often does that happen? World population without synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. Looks like export and trade restrictions going to hinder that. Who produces the most, grows the most food? Phosphate also. World Bank showing you where the inflation will be for 2023. And food security will follow in that footstep. And with this information in hand, laser focused after I know the path I need to take. And we'll start you right off here. Food, winter wheat growing areas in the U.S. On the right side, the drought monitor overlaid on top of the crop grow zones. On the left, the SuperFreeze of Christmas 2022. Now, how do you think our crops are going to do? 50 degrees Fahrenheit below the normal temperatures and a drought, which meant no snow cover on the winter wheat. And as Christmas is officially in the books, it's interesting to see how clean the pressure lines are between the temperatures, starting down on the Gulf of Mexico. 52 degrees Celsius, but it goes from 8 to 10 to 12 to 14 to 16, which is approximately 25, 26 degrees Fahrenheit under the normal. And then in those same winter wheat grow areas, we need to throw the lowest, fastest temperature drop ever recorded. And that's 47 degrees in a single hour. Never recorded anything remotely close to this. 38 degrees was the record broken. And I'll ask you to look at our wheat grow zones again after the pummeling from nature. Do you think we'll have good production this year, yes or no? If you say no, then you would expect wheat prices to increase. Not financial advice, just common sense in a once in a 40-year cold event. Over to Buffalo. Hard to explain in words what this means, especially if you were trapped in there. Now, how would you stay warm through a 3 or 4 day event like this? You could have a little bit of extra food, but how would you stay warm in there? And also, if you needed to use the bathroom, what would happen in that event as well? Things to think about entering the next year of extremes, 2023. And this was such a freeze event. It was so cold outside that I saw politicians with their own hands in their own pockets. Gee, you don't see that every day. Nor do you see Miami being warmer than London every day either. Just to put it as another arrow in your informational quiver. And to layer on top of this, last year, double jet stream. The jet stream broke into 2 pieces. They hadn't seen that before. Double. So you need to ask yourself, do you think our jet streams and cloud cells can be pushed by magnetic activity, electromagnetic stimulus from the sun? Is that a possibility? Deutsche Bank, Citi, and Morgan Stanley are all forecasting another 25% plunge in the stock market. The only break in inflation is with a recession. Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki said, "I believe the economy is in the biggest bubble in history." Kiyosaki bought more gold, predicting $3,000 an ounce in a year. Call the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold, and you may qualify for the No Fee for Life IRA. On qualifying rollovers, give them a call, 888-546-7020. Tell them Adapt 2030 sent you. And now on with the video. Because the World Bank does think that we need an additional amount of financing, especially reserved for green vehicles. I'll agree. I'll take that one to get me through the snow. What do you think? And having been talking about the grand solar minimum, the intensification of weather events, what we would see in extremes for rainfall, what used to be 1 month of rain now turning into 3 years worth of rain like we saw in Saudi Arabia. A day of rain, a few hours of rain would equivalent 6 months of rain, what we saw in Australia. Oh, those once in a 1,000-year storms 3 times in a row. These extremes are going to continue. The electromagnetic effects from our sun stepping into a lower activity period that only occurs once every 400 years. This would explain a lot of the changes. So anything grown food-wise 45 degrees north and above and 45 degrees south and below would be affected just in the general sense. Now we need to add in the Hunga Tonga water vapor ejecta, also now affecting plant and harvest dates in the southern hemisphere. That column of water vapor has now reached the North Pole, so we're expecting a year without a summer. Put all this into your variables now when you look out and you see society moving the way it is. Is it really about the issues, or is it more about the food not being grown and those are the distractions, so you don't see that food won't just get more expensive through 2023. It'll become less available. Which is why you want to look at the world population with and without synthetic nitrogen fertilizers. And if we start on the left, all the way back in 1900, you'll see that, 0% out of the almost 2 billion were fed by their own regenerative agriculture. And as we moved through the 1920s, 30s, 40s, we start to get increasing uses of fertilizer. But then the dependence on that is where this green and orange line cross over. The dependency line currently is almost half the world's population. So what happens when the fertilizers stop? That's the question. Let's take a look at the producers of nitrogen fertilizers, the largest, and then the agricultural use consumers, largest across the planet. As you go through this, do you see any countries in duress that maybe will not export or produce at their full potential? China and Russia would grab my attention right away. But then on the inverse, if we look at China and they're not producing, then that means they're not using because the people are not out in the fields growing food or at work. So there's a population imbalance there. So we need to shuffle that tonnage elsewhere. National balance metric tons. So I broke this chart down. Blue box is the nitrogen, yellow is the phosphates, and the potash is the black box's last column. And if you look at the blue arrow, points to the green is how much nitrogen fertilizer is made globally, and it goes back 2019, 2010, the year 2000. The gray bar is the usage. And you think, well, there's more nitrogen fertilizers produced than the usage. That's such an easy chart to read, and I'll direct you to the bottom. We're looking at about a 20% deficit already for food and fertilizer export restrictions. And now with the EU shutting all its chemical plants, that number of tons produced shall decrease, and we have rolled over to the point we don't make enough fertilizer globally now to supply. The phosphate, we're looking at the exact same thing, but that's just razor thin anyway. Potash, yeah, a little bit better. And remember, in North America and Canada, we have the second largest supply on the planet here in North America. So obviously your eyes are drawn to the orange bar. That is the actual ban where 0 fertilizers is allowed to leave any of these countries at all, 26 countries. And that is almost 9% of global world calories. Now the export licensing, that's something different. That's paperwork, that's red tape. So are the export taxes, but if you add all those up, there are restrictions. Comes to about what you see, almost 20%, which the other bars showed previous chart. And we're going to compare that to 2008. So we look at almost the same amount of countries, 26, 27, but that food shortage alleviated. So did the export embargoes, but this food shortage is just getting started. So these numbers should increase, which is why the World Bank is forecasting more sharp food inflation on the plate. World Bank says it. Here's the map for you. Where do you think we'll experience unrest first? Red countries above 5%. But you look at Turkey and it's over 100%. So that's really, they need different striations in bands, for example. But over to the phosphates, we'll do this again. Different footprint. Who produces the most phosphates and who consumes the most? Well, we start to see some of the same players here. China, Russia, United States, India. Now who's the consumers? India, China, United States, Brazil. Oh, they need quite a bit. So what's the balance in there? And who do you think will get left out if things do not equal any longer? Here's the potash. Largest producers: China, Canada, Belarus, Russian Federation, Jordan, and Israel. Biggest consumers: US, India, Brazil. Now, which countries are friendly countries and which countries are unfriendly countries should be the next. Now, let's mix these all together, and this will give you a good indication here of who's going to get the fertilizer, who's going to have it the most all the time, and which ones produce it, they'll have it all the time. So which countries will be able to grow all the food and control those countries that don't grow the food? G. Let's look at the chart here. China, Canada, United States, India, Egypt. But the consumers of such that could be controlled more easily: Brazil, Brazil, Brazil. Do I see that 3 times? Right in the center. I'm calling unrest in Brazil due to the fact they won't be able to get their fertilizers. Prices are going to increase, and they're already having difficulties down there. As we speak of who's in control, fertilizer prices, world markets, we got that drop off, the spike. That is going to reverse and go above 1,200 this time. I believe, not financial advice, but just common sense, that if you don't have enough of something, the price is going to go up. So as we come into the planting season, Europe's completely offline. So that's not a comprehensive list. That's just the largest producers of and the largest consumers of. When we go to the bottom of the list of those 29 countries that have now restricted exports or banned exports outright, they're the ones that are most reliant on imports. So that you start to see a correlation or some equilibrium there of, if they're really tiny countries that import an enormous amount of fertilizer and they produce a tiny, tiny bit, or they're relying 100% on fertilizers, maybe they got some in from a program, they're not going to re-export it out. It'll be quickly known through 2023 planting season, no later than the end of June, how this list will play out, and then you'll watch the prices run. And best guesstimate, a few of these countries right here are going to be on the list for food security issues, for sure. I would guess probably 4 of those you're going to see the catalyst for anything happening as food, and that could take many shapes and forms. So keep that on your burner there. And again, it's all about getting ready to pounce on something. Where do you see the opportunity in this danger, and how do you position yourself to thrive and help others? Well, first you need to know that you have food, storable foods, so you can ride out some of the chaos. It give you that peace of mind knowing you don't have to venture into adverse conditions to feed your family. Also being able to grow some of your own foods. True Leaf Market, heirloom and organic seeds for any grow zone on the planet. Because spring planting is just a couple months away, it sneaks up fast on you. Every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, myself and Ransom Godwin streaming live from Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, right on to Rumble at the Adapt 2030 channel, and vigilante.tv. Hope to see you there. I do thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of the video, and I'll see you next time.